Welcome to the Ronel Talks Money show. Now, today we are going to do our first book review, and we are going to look into destination wealth. Now, we have the author, Dave Fisher, with us today to talk more about destination wealth. And Dave was also so kind to say that he will be sponsoring two books for the viewers. So please go to the link in the description below and enter our monthly book giveaway competition where you can win one of the Destination Wealth books. So let me just quickly tell you a little bit more about Dave. Dave is a certified financial planner. His 50 years of experience has culminated in a wealth of financial successful clients. Together with his partner, Andrew Dugmore, Dave has established the Fisher Dugmore Group of financial services companies. So Dave, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Ronel. Thanks for having me.
No, it's a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to dig into a bit more why you have written this book and what the readers can get out of this book. But I think I've read the book, and so I've seen what you are telling people, and it's such valuable information. But a lot of the content that you spent in the book is all about financial context. And the financial context of people in terms of abundance and scarcity. And there you also explain why most lotto winners will just lose their lotto money within a short period of time. So maybe you can just tell us a little bit more about this concept in terms of financial context of people.
Thanks, Ronel. I think maybe it's good to go back to why I got interested in financial context in the first place. So in my early years as a financial planner, I started noticing that if I had two individuals that had more or less the same background, the same upbringing, the same education, they got the same degrees, they're in the same occupation, why was there such a discrepancy in the financial outcomes of those individuals? And I started reading and researching, and the more I spent time with clients and the more I read, I started realizing that that financial context is a thing. It's a real thing. So financial context is the way people believe and interact with money. So if I had to say what financial context is, it's actually a belief system. Financial context, every individual's financial context is the way that you interact with money and finances because of the way that you believe about money. So what I also realized was that financial context is separate from academic intelligence, because nowhere in school you can become a top in your field. You can be a rocket scientist, you can be a specialist physician, an auditor, an engineer, whatever you like, but that is normally as a result of your academic intelligence, not your financial intelligence. So what we're talking about with your context is something that Robert Kiyosaki also terms as your financial intelligence. I call it your financial context. So how big or how little your context is determines whether you live a life of abundance or a life of scarcity, because it's got to do with your mindset about money. So it's a belief system. It's what you believe in about money, and this belief system determines your outcome. So if you believe in abundance and you believe in yourself and you set goals, all those things that normally that people with a big context do, they have a higher level of financial success in life than people who have a low context. So what a context also serves as is almost like a thermometer in our lives. So if you think what a thermometer does with the aircon, so if you're in a room and you set the aircon at 22 degrees and it starts getting really hot in that room, the aircon kicks in and it cools the room back down to 22. Now, our financial context work in a similar way with our finances. So whatever your financial context almost creates a benchmark for what level of wealth you're comfortable with. So when it starts getting, you start having too much money or too much success according to your financial context, you actually, weirdly enough, people don't think it's possible, but people actually self-sabotage. So it's that thermometer kicks in and says, whoa, it's way too hot here in the financial area of my life. There's way too much money. I'm going to kick in and I'm going to cool it down. So what I do, I tend to lose the money. And that's exactly what happens with people when they win the lotto, and why so many people worldwide lose money or have so little money left after 5 years when they win the lottery. Because I like to put it similarly to water. So if I take this glass of water here, and I assume that this glass can maybe take 250, 300 mils of water, what's going to happen if I pour a whole liter into the glass? It's going to fill up until the 300 mils, and then everything's going to go onto the table on the floor. Similarly, our financial contexts affect how much money we get to keep in life.
Absolutely. I love that comparison, and I think it is so true. And I think it also starts with people first need to almost kind of like acknowledge, what is my financial context? Because I think sometimes you also have a different view if you are not going to really sit and, delve deeper into how do I really process all of these things. And I think there's so many things that's obviously influencing our financial context. But what would you say, or what tips can you give people that once they know kind of they maybe have like a more a scarcity kind of financial context and they want to transform into more like an abundance thinking type of context, how can they really transform their context?
That's a very good question, Ronel. So to understand your financial, to be able to change your financial context, we have to understand where our financial contexts originate from. So as I said, your financial context has nothing to do with your academic intelligence. It's your financial context is learned behavior that we learn from a very early age. I always like to say that there's two things in life that we often catch ourselves being, is that for those of the listeners who are parents, I know that sometimes I've got 3 sons. My youngest is 20. And over in life, my father and my mother did certain things to me when I was growing up. And when I was a teenager, as a child, I hated them doing that. And often in life, I would catch myself doing something or saying something to one of my boys, and afterwards say, oh my goodness, I'm my dad. So because it's programmed in me, that way is programmed in me. Now, in a similar way, our financial context get programmed in us. So we learn them from our environment. So the primary people that we learn from our financial context from, or that we adapt them from, because it's not a conscious learning process. It's through the mirror neurons in our brain that pick up the behavior of others. So children don't do as their parents say, they do as their parents do. And we exactly the same with our financial context and the way we parent, amongst other things, I think. So we pick up this behavior from our parents, our peers, and our social environment. Things drastically influence our financial context. So I think it's important when we want to change our financial context that we realize where these come from. And then the book talks about a 5-step process that people can use, that we've found when people use it, it really helps them to upgrade their financial context. So it's firstly to realize that they have a context. And then the way you start is, it starts with a vision. So in order to change something, if you are really unfit or you want to lose weight or whatever goal you want to achieve in life, you have to know what you're aiming for. So you have to set a goal of where you want to be, and then that goal gives you a compelling vision. So once you have that vision, the next step is to take stock of your life. So where am I now? Where's my financial context? Where are my finances in relation to where I want to be? And then the third and very important step is to decide. So a lot of people wish for better things. I wish I'll win the lottery. I wish somebody's going to leave me a lot of money in the will. but they never decide to make a difference in their finances. So there's a difference between wishing for success and deciding you're going to be successful. So a critical part of it is to decide that you're going to be successful. Then we need to invest in the process. So that's why financial knowledge and education is so critical. So you have to then invest in yourself, listening, attending courses, webinars, reading books, speaking to people who have a greater financial context. And then linked to that, a very important thing is to mirror the right people. Mm-hmm. So mirroring the right people involves finding coaches and mentors to help you. And people always say, but there's rich people aren't going to help me. They're just so stuck up. Nobody's really going to help me. But believe you me, I've seen in life that the people who truly are successful and have abundance mentality, they don't suffer from a scarcity mentality. They want to invest in others. They want to mentor and coach people. So find the right mentors and coaches. Start hanging out with people that have a context and live a life like you want to live, because you're going to mirror them, and it's going to help you to upgrade your context and start living the life of as if you have already achieved the goal. Those are the most important things. I always say, and I've said it to my sons year in and year out. I think I read it in a book by Dr. David Malapo, and he gave us one of our annual planning sessions, maybe 10, 12 years ago. He once said a thing, like I said, talks in his books about soaring like an eagle. And I always said to my sons, you can't soar like an eagle if you hang around with the turkeys. you have to achieve, if you're seeing somebody have a certain level of success, then you have to live like him, you have to be like him. So that's really critical to the process of changing your context.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with you in the sense of, like approaching people who are more successful than you and learn from them, that mentorship kind of concept. Because I can also see, even with this Ronel Talks Money show, whenever I approach somebody to come and spend some time with us, and it's high profile people, they are immediately saying yes. And that is again showing you that successful people, or people who are successful for the right reasons, they are willing to share knowledge and to spend time with others and help others. And people should take advantage of that, to learn from others, and because you don't want to make the same mistakes than what other people did. So rather learn from them and kind of avoid those mistakes. But Absolutely. Then I also want to ask you, in the book, and I think this is a very valid point that you mentioned, where you said that there's no purpose in kind of raising more income or adding income, or you maybe get a salary increase or a bonus or whatever, but then you spend everything. Then it's almost kind of pointless of having that additional income. So maybe you can just elaborate a bit on that as well.
No, thanks, Ronel. That's so important. In the book, and way before the book, I started realizing that in order for people to get the difference between assets and liabilities and income and expenses, that they have to have some picture, something to visualize and make it real. And I started using the river and dam analogy. So my river analogy is that your financial river is your income. It's the income that you're earning, and you're spending it on your lifestyle. And the reason that I use the analogy of a river is that whatever stays in the river flows away. So you would often say, people look back on their lives and say, well, I earned so much money in the last year or 5 years or 10 years, and they battle to tell you what they did with that money. It seemed to flow away. And if you leave money often in your current account, it's almost as if it has a life of its own. It disappears. So it's important that people realize that to create wealth or get ahead financially, they have to dam the money. They have to put it somewhere. And that's why I say that money that you earn extra, just to spend. Yes, you have a fleeting bit of enjoyment from it, eating out or whatever. But in terms of wealth creation, it's meaningless, because earning more money doesn't make you wealthier. It makes you a hamster on a treadmill. What you want to aim at is you want to get to a point where you've got a dam strong enough to give you a passive income. Then you really live. But you can love your job and you can work. But the problem is with all of us, whether we like it or not, and I think when we get older, as we get older, we realize that I had this huge feeling on the weekend. I dropped my son at university in Cape Town. We spent a week down setting him up in his apartment, and Cora and I left Cape Town on Saturday morning, and I didn't want to tell her, but I had this lump in my throat because I left my baby, it's my youngest is 20, in Cape Town. And that's like weird. I felt this first feeling. People talk about emptiness, but I really felt it. And the reason for that is that he's missing in my life. So it's changed the way I think. Mm-hmm. And exactly the same way, when something changes, you realize that how quickly life passes by. So when it feels like he was born yesterday, but 20 years have gone by. So if I spent my whole life working, thinking I'm going to earn more money, because that's the way I'm going to achieve success, but I didn't live a life, then my life was meaningless. So the reason that you have to understand this is not just because of money and not just about wealth creation, it's about quality of life, is that you earn more money and you just spend it. It's great to earn more money. It's awesome. But if that doesn't equate to wealth creation, to me, it's meaningless, because you're not getting ahead.
No, I absolutely agree with that. And then something else that I really enjoyed reading your book, because I also have this big passion for both physical fitness as well as financial fitness. And I can truly see, how interrelated physical fitness or physical health and financial fitness is. And that's also when I wrote my book, I also compared almost every kind of financial concept to a concept that you will follow, or a process when you want to become physically fit or healthy. So I really enjoyed when I read in your book. Also, I could see there was that link between physical health and financial wealth. So maybe you can just tell us a little bit about that as well.
Thanks, Ronel. Yeah, in the book, I talk about a concept. Firstly, it's really important to me. It's always been important to me, but intuitively so. It's just later on in life, I realized the value. But in the book, and specifically regarding towards the way we look after our bodies and our finances, is a principle I talk about is the human capital. So our source of wealth and our source of income originates within ourselves. It's what we often is referred to as human capital. So human capital is us. It's our bodies, it's our minds, it's our health. And what we do in life is that we're all born with certain capabilities. We go out to school and then to university, and we learn and we decide on an occupation. And then we're selling that human capital to the employer to earn money, or we employ that skill, some type of a skill in our own business, and we sell time or a product to other people to earn money. So it's important for people to understand this relationship between their human capital and income. Mm-hmm. And for two reasons, you don't want to neglect your health. Reason number one is that the minute your health fades, if you have an asset, if you were a farmer and you had a chicken that literally laid the golden eggs, or hen that laid the golden eggs, you're not going to give that chicken junk food. You're going to give it the best food because it's continually laying the golden eggs. Now, exactly the same way in our lives, our bodies and our minds are our human capital. That's what's laying the golden egg. That's what's bringing the money in every time. So every month. So if you neglect your health, two things are going to happen. Number one, you're going to lose your capacity because your asset is going to devalue. You're not going to have the same energy, and poor health relates to poor performance. Number one. And number two, if you don't look after your health and you get all your finances right, you put enough money in your dam, you can retire. What normally happens to those people, they get to retirement age and 2 years later, they get a heart attack or a stroke or something and they pop off. So you're not going to be around to enjoy the fruits of your hard labor if you don't look after your body. Firstly, you're not going to be able to earn as much as you could have earned in the short term. And secondly, you're not going to be around to enjoy it.
No, absolutely. I totally agree with that. And then so something else that you also mentioned that I also am very passionate about is where you said that financial intelligent people never stop learning. And that comes all back to financial education, financial literacy. How important do you believe is that for financial success?
I think you and I were discussing it just now before we started, Ronel, how important just basic level of financial understanding is in life. Without it, people can't function in modern society. So to be able to succeed in everything in life, we need to have knowledge. Knowledge equates to success. So often people think they don't need to succeed financially, or they don't need to have knowledge. They'll just leave it to somebody else. They're going to earn a lot of money. But if you don't have that knowledge and you don't constantly grow in your capability, in your knowledge, you open yourself up to all sorts of things in life. You're not going to achieve what you should have achieved. You're going to take what other people say as the gospel truth, and you're going to make financial decisions or be led to make financial decisions that aren't in your best interest. I know that if at the early stage, I read one of Robert Kiyosaki's books, and he spoke about the 5 financial intelligences, and one of his 5 financial intelligences is increase your knowledge. Because if you can earn all the money in the world, but if you don't know what the current trend is, where to invest the money, what is tax efficient, what leverage is, all of those things, then the money that you earn is worthless. It's like it just stays in the river, and what you put in the dam, you're not really going to create wealth. It's just going to be stagnant.
Yeah, and I think it's also that of, like in putting all your trust, or almost kind of giving the responsibility away to your financial planner or your accountant or your tax consultant. You can have the best financial planner or accountant or tax consultant in the world, but at the end of the day, they still don't understand and know your personal financial situation and needs better than yourself. And it's all about that, taking responsibility for your financial decisions. And even if you don't have the knowledge on the level that they have, it's still about being financially savvy enough to ask the right questions, or to question them and say, but are you sure about this? Because I thought this might work better for me. So that is why it is so important. Nobody kind of expects of everybody to be a financial expert, but it is all about having at least sufficient knowledge so that you can make sure that you are making the best financial decisions. But also kind of getting to that, or to elaborate on that, you also talking about building wealth and saving money are not the same things. And I think there's already, where people quite often have a bit of a confusion in terms of those two concepts. So maybe you should also just explain that to us.
Yes. In my opinion, saving money is basically taking money out of your budget. So the process of saving money is good. It's critical. So saving money is critical to wealth creation because it's the starting point. So the mere act of allocating money from your budget away from your river and putting it into your dam, you already are saving money. But what you do with that money once it's in your dam, and how you invest it or apply it or leverage it or whatever you're going to do with it, is wealth creation. But in order to, so if you take all the money and just pop it under your bed, yes, you've saved the money, but you haven't created effective wealth, because you're not going to have growth in excess of inflation. It's not going to look after you in the long term, etc. So wealth creation starts with a plan. It's the process of establishing a financial strategy, setting goals, establishing a strategy according to the goals, and then developing a plan according to the strategy, and then reviewing and changing that plan as the world changes and your financial knowledge changes in order to achieve the end goal. So wealth creation is like a total strategy. It's a big thing. It's like if I were to go to a hardware store and buy bricks, am I building a house? No. I need to go through a whole process that I've seen an architect and a QS, and I've drawn plans, and we build the house. So wealth creation is that whole process. It's not just saving. It's not just going out and buying bricks.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. And then you also have been talking about the importance of a budget in wealth creation. Now, I know a lot of people don't like budgets. They don't enjoy doing a budget. They see it as this very kind of restriction on their lifestyle. But this, to me, is really so critical. It's almost kind of, you cannot really create wealth if you are not having this foundation or this stepping stone right and correct. So also just talk to us through that.
Well, let's face it, I quite agree with you. More budgets are boring. The mere mention of the word budget makes most people yawn or change the subject because budgeting is like almost being told what to do. So it's like something telling us, and as human beings, most of us don't like to be told what to do. We have this sort of inner rebel. I know I certainly do. So budgeting is important. Without a budget, you're not going to be able to control money. It's integral. So it's never going to be nice. But what changes the way we budget is how important we see budgeting as being part of achieving our goal. So once we have a compelling vision of where we want to be, and we realize how critical budgeting is to achieving that goal, it makes budgeting far more important. It's like waking up every morning to exercise. If you're totally unfit and you've never exercised before, it's not fun. It's not fun getting up. It's nicer to lie in bed, especially if it's cold and rainy like it is in Gauteng today. But once you get in the habit and you realize how important this is, and you realize how good you feel afterwards, then you start doing it. Then you get up at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. and whatever you do, and you get up and you go train. You ignore the pain because it's going to lead to pleasure. In exactly the same way, budgeting is a pain, but if we know what the pleasure is that comes from budgeting, it makes it a lot easier to budget.
No, absolutely. I agree with that. And then also, I think we, being in the financial world, we always tell people, save up for an emergency fund, have an emergency fund. And I believe people never really understood the importance of having an emergency fund before this lockdown period was introduced, and all of a sudden people realized that the people who had an emergency fund had a lot less financial stress, personally as well as within a business, than the people who didn't have an emergency fund to fall back on. What tips can you give to people who kind of realize but they need to start creating an emergency fund?
Very important, Ronel. So who would have thought last year this time, if we had this conversation, that there would be a lot of people in the world who would all of a sudden be reliant on their savings for maybe longer than a year? Even us in our advice to clients always has been that salaried clients need to have a 3-month emergency fund. And if you're in your business, it needs to be 6 or 12. We drastically post-COVID said every sort of minimum, and I say it in my book as well, to me, and a minimum emergency fund is 12 months living expenses. What we never thought was going to happen, and we never think bad things are going to happen to us. We're never going to get sick. No financial crisis is going to strike during our lifetime. Our companies are solid. We work for such big companies. We're never going to be facing retrenchment or any type of financial upheaval. Everybody in our family is healthy. The breadwinner is not going to die. So we don't think these bad things are going to happen to us, because it's part of our survival instinct as human beings to have an optimism bias, to think things are going to go well. It's the way we were created. So we need to have this positivity on the one hand, but we need to realize that bad things can happen. To me, having an emergency fund is the first financial objective. So when you start creating your dam, your money goes in. The very first thing I want my clients to do before they're focusing on long-term planning, retirement planning, medium-term savings, children's investments for education, etc. The first thing I want my clients to have in place from an investment point of view, a savings point of view, is an emergency fund. And I typically want that to be at least 12 months worth of savings. So the way I normally go about it with clients, and actually one of my young planners, Tyron, yesterday said to me what he's really been doing well with clients. He said, okay, well, if you really pushed yourself, what is the maximum amount that you could save on a monthly basis? And the client says X. So that's like, without really thinking about it, it's okay, let's try and put that amount away in your emergency fund. If you can't do it, we'll stop it, or we'll reduce it. But and 80% of people carry on with it because they create that financial habit. They create the legs to the table. So it's important to start. And I read it once in a book about a BHAG, a bag, a big, hairy, audacious goal. So set a big, hairy, audacious goal in terms of how big this emergency fund is. And then you start saving. The first thing you do, finances, is you build up to achieve that 12-month reserve, and it just changes your life. Your emergency fund is critical to the way that you interact with life, the way you feel, and about your emotions and your mental health. Because as human beings, and I've always said this to clients, is that what makes us different from any other creature on earth is that we have the ability to reason and to have strategies and plans, etc. But the minute our well-being is threatened, our primitive brains kick in, and our primitive brains can do one of three things. They can run, they can fight, or they can freeze. And neither of those tend to do well when it comes to our finances or most other things in modern living. So when we get retrenched, or something bad happens to us, or COVID happens to us, and we don't have a reserve fund, we don't have an emergency fund, in our brains, it's the equivalent of being attacked by a saber-toothed tiger for prehistoric man. So our well-being is threatened, and then we stop making rational decisions. We take on debt, we sell the wrong assets, we buy the wrong assets, we make the wrong financial decisions. So what your emergency fund does is your emergency fund empowers you to make the right decisions in these bad times. But the big thing is about, if you wait for the bad times to come, it's too late. You have to make those decisions, those right financial decisions, and start creating that emergency fund before the bad times come.
Absolutely. And I think it's not only about thinking something as severe as what we are experiencing now with the lockdowns. There's just so many other things that can happen in terms of, medical expenses. We live in a country with a lot of crime. So there's so many things that can happen. And the better you are prepared for those situations, the better you will deal with it, and the less financial stress you will experience. But I've also seen that you have, in the book, you've mentioned very good advice in terms of cash versus credit cards. And you can also just touch on that for us.
Thanks, Ronel. So I think with credit cards and cash, I'm not saying that credit cards are a bad thing. And in order to work with a credit card, you have to understand how credit cards work. So a credit card is issued by a financial institution who's going to give you a credit limit on your credit card. And you're going to get this credit card, and it's got, say, for argument's sake, a 10,000 Rand limit, and you can spend that 10,000 Rand immediately. You can go out in day one and swipe, go mad, and spend your 10,000 Rand. But at the end of the month, on statement date, when the bank issues you your statement, whatever you don't pay, they'll tell you on the statement what your minimum payment is. And if you don't settle the full outstanding balance, they start charging you interest. So for the first 30 days or whatever of the having spent the money, you don't get charged interest. But then all of a sudden, the interest accumulates rapidly. So people need to understand this. So if you have the financial discipline and the financial ability to deal with a credit card isn't necessarily a bad thing. Unfortunately, for most people, a credit card is just a nightmare because they get given this money and, wow, I've got 10,000 Rand, and they don't think in advance that this 10,000 Rand, I'm going to have to repay at the end of this month, but I don't have the budget to do it. So I like the cash principle more. The cash principle allows you to only spend what you've got. If you've got 100 Rand in your purse or your wallet, you can only spend 100 Rand. But if there's a piece of plastic there with a 10,000 Rand limit, it's very easy to swipe what you don't have. It's different. There's a different mindset when you're using cash to when you're using credit. It's easy to swipe because we don't feel the pain, but it's hard parting with your cash. So that's why I think cash works better than credit cards. And also in my book, I allude to the fact that how important this is with the financial education of our children. Because when a lot of children, parents would say to children, or I've got clients who say to me, my child, I'll say to my child, there's no money. And the child says, but look there, mommy, in your credit card, in your purse, there's a credit card. Just swipe it. Because they think, oh, there's lots of money. You've got a credit card. You can just swipe it. But if there's cash, then you can say, well, there isn't cash, my dear. I can't buy you that whatever you want. There's no cash in my purse. It's a different level of understanding. So that's for our kids and for us that credit cards are not, or they can be used if they're used wisely. And I always say to people, if you have the savvy to use a credit card and you use it and you have the financial ability and the discipline to settle it before due date or by all, because technically then you've got that money interest-free from the bank until time of statement. But unfortunately, most people don't have that ability. So the minute I see a client he doesn't have that ability or their finances or their budget doesn't show it, I would refer rather use cash.
Absolutely. So there's a nice piece of advice for any parents if you want to prevent your children from spending too much money. You know what to do now. But Dave, you are discussing the 5 secrets for financial success in your book. And then one of these secrets, you talk specifically about giving back and leaving a legacy. Now, this is something that I absolutely can relate to and something that I also aspire to. But why do you say this is so important when it comes to achieving financial success?
I think most people, it depends, it's very age dependent. When you realize how important it is to leave a legacy. But at some stage in almost every person's life, they get to a point where they think, why was I put on earth? What am I here for? And they want to have this feeling that their lives mattered. It's a basic human instinct to feel that I belong and that I matter. So we have to say that we have to acknowledge that this is a human need and it's something that most people have. And in that understanding, we have to start asking what's this going to help us to leave a legacy? And I've really found that sound financial planning, and it's not just about finances, it's about a lot of things. So leaving a legacy includes, yes, sound financial planning, but it also includes discovering your purpose, knowing why you were put on earth. Or you're just doing what you're doing, or you're really doing what you're supposed to do. I believe that every person was created for a specific purpose, and I'll speak about it in the book. And one of my favorite quotes is from Mark Twain, when he said that the 2 greatest days in a man's life are the day that you were born and the day that you find out why you were born. So we were all born for a purpose, and a legacy is the extension of that purpose. Because if you're born for a specific reason, then why do you want to leave this earth without leaving that reason behind, leaving a message behind for at least your loved ones? So you can be part of it is being a kind person, being compassionate, giving to others, loving others, etc. But linked to that is good finances, because you can do all of those things and mess up on your finances and have bad financial planning. And it's weird. In my 30 years of financial experience, you wouldn't think that it happens, but I've on a few occasions sat with a widow. I've sat with widows. I spoke to one this morning whose husband just passed away now, unfortunately, from COVID, to start helping with the planning. And I've dealt with, so luckily with this individual, he made wise decisions, and he's got sufficient funds. And I've sat with widows with children where there wasn't adequate financial planning. And even though those people left a positive legacy, they loved their wives and their children, and or husbands and children, and they were compassionate and did all of those things in life. The mere fact that they didn't plan their finances properly, they weren't astute financial planners, those left a bitter taste in the ones they left behind's minds, because it really affected their lives. So without proper financial planning, you cannot leave a good legacy, because you're going to leave a legacy in terms of who you were. But the pain of losing you is going to be compounded by the pain of the financial state that you leave your family or your loved ones behind in the world. So planning is really part of leaving a legacy, and legacies are critical importance to all of us.
No, I absolutely agree with you. Dave, I think to conclude our discussion today, what would you say, what is the overall message that you want readers of your book, Destination Wealth, what should they take from this book?
Thanks very much, Ronel. A lot of things. So as I wrote the book, there's a lot of things in it. It's like, as some of the people who read the book say, that you actually got to read it a few times to understand the layers in the book. Because when I started out, it was initially the book was like 3 times its length, and through editing, etc., people saying to me, no, it's got to be this length or that length for people to want to read it and to keep their attention, etc. So really try to do that. But the main reason and my passion behind writing the book, and what I want people to realize from it, is that how much or little money you have has a great effect, a massive effect on your life. Yes, whether we like it or not, and we talk about however we think about money, money plays a major role in our lives, from the way we live, what we eat, our children's education, where we go on holiday, our personal safety. All those things are linked to how much money we have or don't have. So it has a massive influence on our life. And our financial contexts are critical in terms of how much money we have. So I want people to realize, firstly, that they have a financial context. Secondly, that their financial context drastically influence the quality of how much money they get to keep in life, and therefore the quality of their lives. And then I want them to not feel anxious about that or feel defeated by that, but to know that they can make a difference, they can change. So there are steps, as I put out in the book, that you can employ in your life to upgrade your financial context. But it's like being unfit. If you're unfit and you don't know you're unfit, it doesn't bug you. So you have to realize that you have a context, and evaluate whether it's good or not. And in doing so, the comfort is, and the message from the book is, that you can improve your financial context. You can get better. You can have a greater financial life. And I really want to inspire people, especially from a South African perspective. I think in South Africa, if you have a career and you've had an education and you're in the position that you can plan well financially, it's your social responsibility and your moral obligation to do it well, because there are so many people that need you. We need entrepreneurs in this country. We need people to thrive, to do well with their finances, because that's what builds a nation.
Absolutely. That's such a worthy and beautiful message. Dave, I want to thank you for spending some time with us today, sharing more about your book as well as your overall vision for people in terms of financial wellness. So thank you for your time and just spending time with us. And then also to the viewers, I hope you have really enjoyed this discussion. I am going to share the link where you can get hold of Dave's book, Destination Wealth. I have read it and I can definitely recommend it. And then remember, there's also a link where you can enter our giveaway competition, and there you can potentially win one of Dave's books. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Please tell us in the comments what you have enjoyed, what have you learned, any questions you want to ask, and remember to subscribe to the channel. Thank you. Until next time.